Hello, this video is a summary and the general analysis of the main themes in Thomas Hardy's novel Jude the Obscure. I'll be posting other videos that isolate particular ideas in the novel. For example, I'll shortly upload an analysis of how the idea that death is the best deliverance is central in the novel. So the plot follows the life story of Jude Fawley from childhood until he turns 30 and dies. Jude is an orphan. He's raised by his aunt. He's fascinated by knowledge and aspires to study at the university at Christminster to become a scholar. But he sees all his hopes pulverized by the environment where he's born, the Victorian society, and by the unbearable force of social determinism. Jude is born in Mary Green, a rural area, and since early age he doesn't have the soul of a peasant. He thirsts for knowledge. A brief event at the beginning of the novel shows how Jude doesn't think like all the villagers around him. He's just a kid and he's hired by Mr. Trotham to keep the birds away from his cornfield. Jude heads to the field, and the first thing he does is take his clacker and starts to wave it to chase away the birds, which is the normal thing to do. But then Jude stops. He thinks that those birds aren't doing anything wrong. They're just unwanted, a lot like he is unwanted. First by his parents, who have separated and left him with his aunt, and also by his aunt, whom he has overheard express her desire to see him leave for Christminster. The birds only want to eat. It's the natural thing for them to do. So he decides to stop scaring them away. The farm's owner, Mr. Trotham, catches Jude red-handed, colluding with the birds by letting them have a good meal of corn. He smacks the little boy for his bad work and sends him home. It is perplexing and nastily put in the narrator's words how what was good for God's birds was bad for God's gardener. Jude's miserable existence is due to no fault of his. Since his birth, he's been thrown into the meat grinder that is society, and the major blades that would shred his dreams, his goals and his youth are marriage, social determinism, geography and religion. Jude's schoolmaster, Richard Phillotson, is leaving Mary Green for Christminster. Jude is intrigued by the city of Christminster, and as Phillotson has confided into Jude, he's going out to become a university graduate. Jude's aunt too thinks Jude has a better future in Christminster, and it's northwards. He heads northwards. He runs into two men and asks them for directions. They tell him that yes, Christminster is still up north, and that sometimes he can see it from afar, sometimes he can't. It's as if it is an illusion and not a real place. It is sometimes visible and sometimes invisible. It is a fleeting dream. After walking for some time, Jude tires. He goes back home and decides to give it another try another day. One fine evening, Jude heads northwards again, filled with hope to see the glaring lights of the city from afar. And on his way, he meets some travellers coming back from Christminster. He asks them about the city, and they describe it to him in lush terms. It is an illuminated city where people love to read books. The traveller's words excite Jude, who starts to fantasize about the city where the tree of knowledge grows. Now, this is a direct religious reference. In a Christian faith, the tree of knowledge was forbidden. Adam and Eve were prohibited from eating from it, and when they did, they committed the original sin. They were punished by being cast away to a lesser existence, and they became mortals. It is a strong foreshadowing of the events that would subsequently happen. Jude covets something he has no right to get, and his unattainable dream would cause him nothing but suffering, being cast away and eventual death. Jude is full of curiosity about Christminster, but there aren't a lot of people in his village who could answer his questions about Christminster. He resorts to the village's quack Filbert, a charlatan who advertises himself as a doctor and makes a living by selling the villagers fake medicine to treat their real and fake ailments. He tells Jude that the people at Christminster are sophisticated. They read dense books, and that most of them speak Latin and Greek fluently. Whoa, Jude is amazed. Filbert senses the excitement in Jude and throws at him a fake deal. He tells Jude that if he helps him sell his medicaments for 2 weeks, Filbert will give Jude books that will help him learn Latin and Greek. Jude diligently advertises Filbert's medicine, and when it's time to collect the books, it turns out Filbert doesn't have them. Jude reaches out to Phillotson, hoping the ex-schoolmaster might have similar books. Phillotson sends him the books. Jude leafs through them, but finds finds them extremely hard. He doesn't give up though. He keeps grappling with the books, all while helping his aunt at the bakery. Years go by. Jude does what he can to cater for his thirst for knowledge and education and to earn a living. Then he meets Arabella. They become romantically involved. He overhears her telling her friends that Jude very much wants to marry him. Jude and Arabella haven't been together for long, but he feels flattered. At this point, it is legitimate to wonder why Jude hasn't acted yet on his aspiration of going to Christminster and studying at the university. He is no longer a kid, he can take matters into his hands, but he doesn't. It's possible that Jude is experiencing eticophobia, the fear of failure, and what he does is let himself be swindled again, this time by Arabella. One day, he tells her that he's contemplating leaving the town. She panics and tells him that he can't because she's pregnant. Owing to his sense of responsibility and obligation, he marries her. He wouldn't let her face society and raise their kid on her own. After their marriage, it would appear she hasn't been pregnant. It must have been a mistake, she tells him. He detests himself to the point of thinking of committing suicide. Marriage wears him down. It shackles him, it suffocates him. He can't pursue his dream of attempting to join university, and he stays like this until Arabella decides to leave him and to go to Australia. Her departure is lived as an emancipation by Jude. He feels motivated to finally go to Christminster. She asks if he's okay with her leaving. He's more than okay. He welcomes the idea and even gives her money. Jude tries to enroll at the university at Christminster, but his endeavours are turned down. He's not the right profile to be granted entry to university. He's self-learned, he belongs to the working class, and he doesn't have any money. That's the type of profile universities swipe left on. He drowns his disappointment in liquor. There are two people that are not complete strangers to him in Christminster. There's Mr. Fullerton from childhood, and there's Jude's cousin, Sue. He hesitates to introduce himself to her. He stalks her from afar. She works in an ecclesiastical warehouse. He becomes gradually obsessed by her. She becomes another forbidden fruit. He wants to introduce himself to her and to get to know her, but he can't because of three main reasons. One, he thinks he'd be ashamed to tell her that he's married. Two, they're cousins, and anything other than platonic relationships between cousins is vile. And three, he's been warned by his aunt not to get intimately involved with Sue. Preventing himself from introducing himself to Sue is another example of eticophobia. He prefers to preserve his fantasies about what getting to meet Sue would be like, rather than meet her, disappoint her, and destroy the ideality of knowing Sue Bridehead. He keeps watching her from afar. It is Sue who learns about his presence in Christminster and pays him a visit at his workplace. She doesn't find him there and leaves him a note. Sue seeking out the man rather than Sue being sought by the man, as it's customary for women in the cultural and historical context of the story, shows how much of a rebel Sue is. When Jude comes back to work, his co-workers tell him about a woman who's come to see him. He figures out it's Sue. He writes her a note and they finally meet. Sue is nothing like Arabella. She's sophisticated, she's witty and critical of her society. Jude goes to see Fullerton, and it happens he's looking for somebody to take a teaching position. Sue is trying to find a job. Jude arranges for them to meet, and Sue takes the job. Her relationship with Jude is flirtatious. It's full of hesitation, which is quite intriguing for the both of them. Jude is quite attracted to Sue, but he can't act on his feelings because he's technically still married to Arabella, although she's left him. Sue is courted by Fullerton too, who, although is much older than her, proposes to marry her. She accepts. Marrying Fullerton is a good move for her career. They work in the same field, education, and he can help her move forward in her career. Sue doesn't think like the typical emotional archetype of the Victorian woman. She follows her mind, not her heart. She is the real rebel in the story. Her marriage to Fullerton turns out harder than she thought it would, and yes, the pun is intended. It is intimacy that bothers her the most. She is repulsed by him. Sharing her bed with him disgusts her. Both Jude and Sue have seen their lives take damaging blows by the institution of marriage. Jude's aunt dies, and at her funeral he meets Sue. They talk and she tells him how regretful she is of having married Fullerton. Jude finds out that he's still very much attracted to her. Sue gets to the point where she can no longer stomach living with Fullerton. She asks him directly to let her leave and live with Jude. Fullerton doesn't know what to make of her request, but he ends up accepting. Arabella comes back to England. She meets Jude and tells him that she's remarried in Australia, which is not legal because technically she's still Jude's wife. Jude starts to fill the papers of divorce. Sue and Fullerton separate too. Sue and Jude live together now, but they don't get married. They've had terrible experiences with marriage. It is Sue who's more scarred by her former marital experience. Jude gets beyond his first failure and proposes to Sue. She refuses, saying that marriage would only ruin their lives. They keep living together and have 2 out-of-wedlock children. Their relationship is abhorred by society. They're viewed as ungodly sinners. Jude works as a stonesmason, a very different job from what he thought he would do. One day he gets a letter from Arabella where she tells him that he has a son and that her parents have been taking care of the kid, but they no longer can. Jude is surprised and Sue welcomes the idea of adopting the little kid. Arabella needs not be asked twice. The boy Little Jude lands at Jude and Sue's. His appearance is pretty distinctive. He looks austere. His complexions are more similar to those of an older person than to the kids. The family continues to struggle for income and acceptance, and it gets even plagued by Jude's deteriorating health. Little Jude tells Sue that it would have been better if he hadn't been born. There's nothing easy or happy or good about the family's life. They can't even rent a home as a family, since Jude and Sue are not married. One fine morning, an unspeakable event happens. Little Jude acts on his dark vision of life. He hangs himself and his half-siblings. He leaves a misspelled note which reads, "Done because we're too many." This is the hardest blow that Jude and Sue incur. The tragic event marks the defeat of the couple and the triumph of society. Sue goes back to Fullerton. She believes her kid's murder is God's punishment for leaving a husband, living with a lover, and begetting 2 out-of-wedlock children, the legitimate child killing the illegitimate children. She doesn't attend the kids' funerals. She considers that because they were conceived outside marriage, they were illicit, unholy, cursed. Sue has been grappling with her society's mores, now submits to them. Jude too goes back to his former wife, Arabella. Towards the end of the novel, even Fullerton goes back to Mary Green and retakes his former job. Social determinism defeats everybody. Jude's health continues to deteriorate until he dies on the Remembrance Day. The Remembrance Week is a fictitious ceremony, but it's very much modelled after the University of Oxford's Insignia. It's a celebration that honours the university's founders, benefactors, and honorary alumni. It's a reminder of the path that Jude aspired to, but could never tread on. The road of education and social mobility is the road not taken, not for a lack of trying, but due to insurmountable forces. The university's celebration is a social event. There are processions, there are boat races, and theatrical performances. Arabella is enjoying all of that. She checks on Jude and finds him dead. The first thought that comes to her mind is, to think he should die just now. Why did he die just now? She ignores his death. She wouldn't let something like her husband's death deprive her of enjoying the festivities. She closes the door and gets out. A villager meets her and asks how Jude is doing. She lies and tells him that Jude is sleeping and won't be waking up anytime soon. At the end of the novel, Arabella and another widow called Mrs. Edlin talk about whether Sue will come to Jude's funeral or not. Arabella says that Sue herself is a troubled soul and that she won't find peace until she too dies. Now let's go back to the novel's title. Jude is obscure, unknown, indistinguishable, insignificant. Despite his high ambitions and his hard work learning Greek and Latin on his own, he doesn't escape the fate of all poor men born and raised in Mary Green. His attempt to defy the system brings only more misery that culminates with death at 30. This has been a general summary of the novel and an analysis of the main ideas. I'll probably post another video that isolates the idea that death is the best deliverance and how dominant this idea is in the novel. Now this video has reached its end. Until we meet again, have a great day.